It is not easy to run a restaurant. Despite this, Apollo was always very proud of his Middlesbrough-based restaurant Kilimandjaro. This is one business owner who always treated his employees and customers with dignity. However, when 3 guys from out of town arrived for some chicken, they ended up leaving without paying. Apollo was enraged by their actions, and he later received a letter from them. But before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. Soccer fans who came to see Middlesbrough FC Kilimandjaro was a popular place to eat after the game if you played on the weekend. Waka Waka chicken was one of its signature dishes. Despite the busy weekends, Apollo and the team were surprised when 3 guys from out of town arrived and then left without paying. Everything seemed normal for Apollo and his Kilimandjaro team for the first few hours of that busy weekend shift. Customers were arriving in droves and service was running smoothly. To be honest, Apollo wasn't even there. He was having fun with his family and was completely unaware of what was going on at his restaurant. He had no idea that something completely unexpected was about to happen and that he'd be receiving an awkward phone call from the manager. 3 guys walked through the restaurant's doors midway through that busy weekend shift, clearly interested in sitting down and eating some food. They were most likely supporters of the opposing team and were from out of town. At the very least, the staff noticed that their accents were a little different. It wasn't long before a waiter was attending to their needs and taking their orders. Everything appeared to be going as planned. Walking into an unfamiliar restaurant and placing an order is always a risk. The 3 friends, on the other hand, were glad they chose Kilimandjaro. Waka Waka chicken with cheese was enjoyed by 2 of the friends, while Waka Waka chicken without cheese was enjoyed by the 3rd. The staff could tell from the lack of conversation that these 3 guys were enjoying every bite. After a half-hour wait, the 3 friends were ready to receive the check. One of the things the friends couldn't get over was the sauce on the table where they were eating. At first glance, they noticed that the bottle's logo and colors resembled sauce from another well-known chicken restaurant, Nando's. However, as soon as they tasted it, they noticed that it had a distinct flavor, and they continued to enjoy their delicious meal. It was now time to pay. The 3 pals were prepared to pay for their meal. The total cost of the food was £35, which is roughly $43. As the waiter approached their table, Tom, Alex, and Harry reached for and handed over their credit cards. But they were completely unprepared when the waiter informed them that they only accept cash. The waiter then went to another table to take orders, but the 3 friends had other plans. When the waiter returned to their table to collect their cash payment, they were surprised to see that it was empty. Tom, Alex, and Harry had simply gotten up from their table and left the restaurant. They had failed to pay for their food, and they had never returned. Naturally, the waiter had no choice but to summon Apollo, who was none too pleased. Apollo was completely perplexed when the waiter explained what had occurred. He couldn't understand how, in this day and age, a group of friends could walk into a restaurant, order their food, eat it, and then leave without paying. The truth is that Apollo has been on a long journey throughout his life, with many twists and turns. But this was one of the most bizarre yet. In an interview with Gazette Live, Apollo explained that his birth country, Burkina Faso, literally translates as the land of honest people. Having spent his formative years in the West African country, Apollo has always valued honesty and brought that value with him when he moved to the United Kingdom years ago. In Apollo's case, he had no choice but to resort to desperate measures. Apollo had strong feelings about what had happened at his restaurant because of his reputation as an honest man. He admitted to having lost some faith in humanity as a result of the incident. To ensure that this did not happen again, he advised his staff members that if something like this happened again, they should make sure that the customers stayed until they paid. Despite his disappointment, Apollo hoped that the customers would return. After a few days, there was still no sign of the 3 guys returning to pay for their food. Apollo made a point of staying at the restaurant at all times in case Tom, Alex, or Harry returned. With each passing day, the owner's hopes for their return dwindled. However, while working in his office, Apollo was surprised to see one of his employees run in and present him with something As the waiter rushed in, he informed Apollo that he had a letter for him that he needed to read right away. The staff member had read the contents of the letter and was desperate for Apollo to see what was inside. Intrigued by what it could be, the owner snatched the envelope from his waiter's grasp. However, as soon as he opened the envelope, he was astounded by what fell out. When Apollo opened the envelope, he was surprised to see 40 pounds, approximately $50, in notes fall out onto his desk. "We opened the envelope and there's some money," the owner explained to Gazette Live. The money had been sent by Tom, Alex, and Harry, the three guys who had fled the restaurant just a few days before. After being taken aback by what he had received, Apollo was in for another shock when he discovered a letter inside the envelope. From the moment he began reading the letter, Apollo could tell that all three of the friends were deeply sorry for leaving the restaurant without paying for their meals. "Please accept my companions and my heartfelt apologies. We forgot to pay our bill," one of them wrote. "It was very unlike us, which is why we are very remorseful," they explained. But Apollo wasn't convinced. They then proceeded to explain what had occurred that day, despite not indicating that they intended to pay for their food that day. The three friends assured Apollo that they did so sincerely. They simply did not have any money on them. They explained that they wanted to pay with a credit card, but were told that the restaurant only accepts cash payments. This explains why they left the restaurant without being noticed. They were looking for money. However, things did not go exactly as planned. When the waiter informed them that the restaurant did not accept credit cards, the three friends decided to rush out and find the nearest ATM. They even claimed to have agreed with a staff member to go out and get cash from a machine and return it as soon as possible. "We then exited Kilimandjaro to embark on a search," they wrote. Despite their best efforts, they were forced to divert their attention elsewhere. Even though they spent the next half hour looking for an ATM, the three friends realized that the last train back home was about to depart. "This diverted our attention away from finding an ATM machine and led to us running down to the train station and just making our train," they wrote. The group only realized they had forgotten to pay the check at that point. They were miles away from Middlesbrough by that point, and it was too late. They were writing a letter to Apollo and not coming back to the restaurant to pay him in person because they lived in another part of the country. They apparently wouldn't be able to return to the restaurant and apologize the way they hoped because they weren't from Middlesbrough. They weren't sure when they'd be back in Kilimandjaro, so they wanted to pay them as soon as possible. While reading the group's explanation was humbling for Apollo, it wasn't the only thing they shared with him. Tom, Alex, and Harry also told him that they had such a good time at Kilimandjaro that they wanted to give it 5 stars. They promised to get on TripAdvisor as soon as possible and write something extremely positive. He wasn't sure what to do after he finished reading the letter and placed it on his desk. Apollo described himself as absolutely gobsmacked after reading the letter. "It was surprising and shocking when we first received the letter," he recalled. "The owner, for one, couldn't believe that people still do incredible things like this. I thought those people had vanished from the planet," he said. And despite coming from the land of honest people, Apollo is now convinced that there are honest people everywhere. Even though the letter restored Apollo's faith in humanity, there is no evidence that the three friends ever returned to Kilimandjaro to meet him in person. However, it appears that they kept their word and left a 5-star review on TripAdvisor. "I would highly recommend it to anyone in the area, and I would return if I ever found myself in Middlesbrough again," they wrote. They would have been wasting their time if they had returned for some Waka Waka chicken. Tom, Alex, and Harry's long journey back to Middlesbrough appears to have been in vain. This is because Apollo's restaurant has been permanently closed since what happened. It's unclear why the restaurant has closed, but it appears that other locations across the country are still open. In any case, Apollo appears to have found a lot of inspiration in that heartwarming letter, and his life has only gotten better and better. There's no denying Apollo must have felt defeated when he was forced to close his restaurant. However, it doesn't appear that the businessman stayed out there for long. Apollo was busy posting photos of himself and his family online just days after receiving the bad news. He could be seen driving his car in one of the photos, and he captioned it with 2 simple words: "Feeling blessed." Although Tom, Alex, and Harry will be unable to return to Apollo's restaurant to express their gratitude in person, they will be relieved to learn that he is happy and doing well for himself. Apollo has not only created his sauce, but he is also the chairman of the soccer team, Thornaby FC. And through his recent business ventures, he has gained access to famous soccer players. One thing is certain, this ambitious man's future looks promising. At the end of the day, Apollo is an ambitious businessman because he wants to ensure that his family has everything they require. Not only that, but he wants his partner and children to be happy and to inspire his children to be as ambitious as he is. We do not doubt that after hearing stories like this one, they will grow up to follow in their father's footsteps.